Chapter 20. What have you done with him? 2 days later, Adam crossed London Bridge in a thick fog, which so hid the changed familiar landmarks that he wondered if he would be able to find his way to Delisle House. It was chilly and wet and rather suffocating, and the people whom he met were beaded all over with tiny drops of moisture and had a straining look in their eyes. It was not the way he had imagined coming back to London, but perhaps it was even better. As he made his groping way through the muffled city and out again at Ludgate, he imagined afresh the end of his long road. He saw himself entering the hall at Delisle House, where a fire would be burning brightly. He saw Roger coming toward him, his grey eyes under the broad brow shining with joy, and at Roger's heels, ears flopping, silky sides gleaming in the firelight, would be Nick. Then Roger would hug Adam till he lifted him clean off the floor, and that night he would say as Grim had said to Havelock, "Sleep, son, sleep tight, and fear nothing. Your sorrow has turned to joy." The road beyond Temple Bar was so deep in mud that Adam went squelching in almost to his knees at every step. Dark lurked beyond the whiteness of the fog. Now and then a ghostly building loomed up and vanished. Adam was so tired after his long day's march that only the thought of what he would find when he got there kept him wearily plodding on till he came to the Delisle gatehouse. He knocked at the wooden door, and after endless minutes the porter came to open it. "Oh, it's you," he said. "Come in, but they're all away." "Away?" repeated Adam, unable to believe his ears. "That's what I said. Come in." "Roger too? And why not? His place is with his lord at Christmas time." Adam kicked at a cobblestone with his squelching shoes and fought to steady his quivering mouth, to keep the tears that stung behind his eyes from spilling over. His heart felt as if it would burst. The porter put a kindly hand on his shoulder and led him across the courtyard to the hall door. "He looked everywhere for you before he went," he said, "and he left messages for you too. He said you could stay here till someone should be going to Ludlow, and then go along with whoever it is. He'll pick you up there in May." "May? But that was months away." Adam sniffed loudly and wiped his nose with the tail of his wet cloak. "Where is he now?" he asked. "He's with Sir Edmund, who's with the Lord King putting down the rebellion in Wales." "Wales?" repeated Adam forlornly. It sounded as far away as the moon or Scotland. "The rest of the Delisles are at Ludlow, but I'm here, and the bailiff and his family are here, so pull yourself together and make the best of it." Delisle House in the winter, with only a few people rattling around in it like a handful of dried peas in a bushel basket, was altogether a different place from the Delisle House in summer, when Sir Edmund and Lady Richenda sat at the high table and Simon carved for them, when Marjorie and Hugh and the rest played London Bridge in the garden, and Emily made ready for her wedding, when Roger and the other minstrels sang and told tales. Now it was dim and empty and draughty. The fine glass in the windows was gone, and fog seeped in around the edges of the heavy wooden shutters. The tapestries had been taken from the walls, the silver dishes and candlesticks from the open cupboard shelves, and the bright silk cushions from chairs and benches. A fire burned on the hearth in the center, but even with the vent open above, the smoke hung low in a cloud instead of rising. Adam had a good supper that night, and afterward an audience for the story of his adventures. He had a hot bath and a warm bed to sleep in, and a maidservant took away his clothes to dry and brush them for him. He would not have to hide under a bridge again or tramp long miles when he was tired and cold. Still he lay awake late into the night, longing for Roger, longing for Nick, wondering how he was to fill the flat and empty months ahead. It would be better when he got to Ludlow where Hugh and Marjorie were, but who would be going to Ludlow in the winter? And suppose Roger should be hurt or killed? They were fighting in Wales, weren't they? In the morning, Matthew the bailiff's son came to bring Adam his clothes and waken him. "I'm glad you've come back," said Matthew, sitting down on the edge of the bed. "It's been lonely since Hugh and Godfrey and the others went to Ludlow. My cousin Agnes, you saw her last night, has come from Uxbridge to spend the winter and be trained by my mother. "She's dreadful," he finished flatly. Adam had not cared so much for Matthew as for the other members of Hugh's company, but now they were drawn together by their common feelings about Agnes. She was a busy, bossy, self-satisfied young thing, tossing her long yellow hair proudly and walking with her stomach out. She had light blue eyes, slightly popped, and a full red mouth which she kept pursed up in a disapproving way. She called Adam "boy," and ordered him to bring her stool or the book off the shelf or to fetch her a comfit from the cupboard, as if she were the lady of the house. Her name meant Lamb of God, she said, but to Adam she was just a silly sheep, and not a sheep of God either. She occupied dull moments with thinking up humiliating accidents for her to fall into, which he would see, turning aside to hide his smile, but he contented himself meanwhile with answering her lofty remarks with a derisive "Bah!" It was no way for a minstrel to behave, he realized that, but then at Delisle House they did not treat him as a minstrel. To them he was a rather tiresome boy who had been left in the bailiff's care. As often as they could, he and Matthew escaped from the house and from Agnes and went sightseeing, sometimes in London and sometimes in Westminster. Christmas came soon and lasted 12 days, from the feast of the Nativity till 12th night. Nothing much went on at Delisle House with just the bailiff's family there. The Yule log was brought into the hall with a rather feeble fanfare and kindled from the remains of the Yule log of the year before. The bailiff's wife handed out some battered masks, and they capered about in dragons' heads and asses' heads, and tried to pretend they were very merry. As Adam sang, his voice would quaver unhappily. There were some carols, but as he hadn't his harp, it was not very convincing. He kept remembering last Christmas, which he and Roger and Nick spent at Manor House in Yorkshire. That had been a real Christmas, with joy and minstrelsy. All the young people in the hall had danced and sung the holly and the ivy carol, with the boys bringing in the holly from one side and the girls carrying in the ivy from the other. After they had danced, singing round in circles, the holly chased the ivy around the hall till everybody was breathless with laughing. This year nobody laughed, as if he meant it. On New Year's Eve, the wassailers came with a big bowl of hot spiced ale in which roasted apples were floating, and everybody had a drink of it. "Wassail!" the cry rang out under the high oak ceiling in the hall, and "Drink hail!" the answer came ringing out. The bailiff gave the wassailers some money, and they went off singing a carol. The people at Delisle House the next day exchanged New Year's gifts. Adam had told the tale of Havelock at Gracechurch Market, and got enough pennies to buy walnuts for Matthew, and some figs for the porter, but nobody remembered to give him anything. The chief feature of the day was the way Agnes went about with a Cheshire cat grin on her face, announcing that she got more gifts than anyone else. Away from Delisle House there were plenty of festivities that really were gay, and Adam and Matthew went to as many of them as they could manage to wriggle and squeeze their way into. They went to the Christmas play at St. Clement's, and saw the shepherds give the Christ-child gifts of a ball and a bird and a bob of cherries. On the eve of the Feast of the Innocents they were in the crowd that gathered at St. Paul's to watch the boy bishop. A lad of their own age, all dressed up like a bishop, with mitre and robes, walked at the head of a procession of boys into the cathedral, and performed the whole service. He even preached a sermon in Latin. "Do you suppose he made that up himself?" said Matthew, sceptically. "I bet he could," said Adam, wagging his head. "I wish I was him. I bet I could have done it better." This boy bishop was handsome but stiff. A boy with minstrel's training like himself could have done it, Adam thought, with an air. A man standing next to him had heard what he said. "Do you know how to make music on a trumpet?" the man asked abruptly. Adam's hands ached for his lost harp. "I play the harp," he said, "and Roger was going to teach me to play the viol. Anybody can play a trumpet that can draw in a big breath and blow." "What I was leading to was this," said the man pointedly. "He who blows well puts the narrow end to his mouth, and the wide end outward." Adam scuffled his feet uneasily. The man meant that he had been boasting. Roger used to say that he had a tendency that way. It took him a little while to recover from this uncomfortable episode. As the king was keeping Christmas court in Conway Castle in Wales this year, Westminster was quiet, but still one holiday tournament was held, and Adam and Matthew went to watch. The crowd was so thick that all they really saw was the coming and going of knights and ladies and heralds, and the crowds of minstrels and tumblers and jugglers. They heard the trumpets and the shouting, the whinnying of horses and the stamp of their feet, the clash of lances and shields. Adam had never in all his life seen so many shields of arms blazoned in bright colors with lions and wyvers, with chevrons and fountains and sheaves. He thought of Perkin and wished, as he so often did, that he were here instead of the well-meaning but dull boy beside him. In the streets of London every night during the Christmas season great bonfires blazed high in the sky to clear the air and to give cheer. Wealthy citizens put bread and drink on tables before their doors, and anybody who was hungry might help himself, as long as the supply lasted. In the daytime, bands of apprentices had wrestling matches and archery contests in the open fields. Oh, there was plenty to see and to enjoy away from Delisle House. After Twelfth Night came Plough Monday, when everybody went back to work. In the country beyond St. Clement Danes, the villeins began to plough the fields for the planting of the Lenten seed, oats, peas, beans, barley, and the vetches. The cold and gloomy days crept on, with dark coming after evensong, and the long evenings full of Agnes and the sort of baby games she liked. Then came a stretch of bitter weather, so cold that the Fleet stream froze over, and Londoners went sliding on the ice with the shin bones of animals strapped to the soles of their feet. They used poles tipped with iron to push themselves along, and they could work up a speed that was almost, so they shouted happily to one another, like flying. The older ones propelled themselves with solemn joy in straight lines, but the younger fry played tag or jousted, using their poles as lances. There was many a tumble and not a few battered heads and bruised arms, but no one was badly hurt. Adam, having begged a couple of shin bones from one of the foreign butchers in Butcher's Row on the Strand, stayed out all day as long as the ice lasted. The cold, clear air, the swift motion, and the joy of friendships made on the moment kept him from churning over and over in his mind his discontent at Delisle House, and the longing for Roger that gnawed at him without stopping. One afternoon, when the bells of St. Clement's were calling out oranges and lemons faintly over the frozen fields, Adam, careless for a moment of where he was going, bumped head-on into a man coming from the other direction. The impact made them both gasp, but only Adam, who was the lighter, took a tumble. The man reached out a hand to help him up, and Adam, as he scrambled to his feet, saw the gay-colored short surcoat of a minstrel. The next moment he was looking straight into Jenkin's face. With a yell, Adam flung himself at Jenkin, and down they both went in a tangle of poles and shin bones and legs, and Adam on the hole on top. "Where's Nick?" he shouted, sitting astride Jenkin and bouncing on his stomach for emphasis. "What have you done with him?" Everybody in the vicinity came rushing up to see what was happening. A man seized Adam by the shoulders and tried to pull him off. "Let me alone!" he roared. "He stole my dog. Where is he? Where is Nick?" Jenkin groaned. "Get off me," he said, "and I'll tell you." Reluctantly, Adam freed Jenkin, but stood and glowered down at him, ready to pounce again if he should try to run away. Jenkin sat up and felt himself all over tenderly. His face cleared. "Nothing broken, no thanks to you," he said. "I haven't got your dog, boy, and that's the truth. He chewed his leash one night near Gorhambury, and the next morning he was gone. I searched everywhere, but I couldn't find him. I was sorry I took him, after I heard at the ferry under St. Catherine's Hill on the way back from the fair how you'd swum the river for him. I didn't know you set so much store by him. I didn't want the horse. Cost too much to feed, so I took the dog instead. If you ever find him, you can have dog and horse both." Adam's eyes searched Jenkin's thin, dark, vivid face. Could he believe him? Jenkin returned his look squarely. "It was near Gorhambury I lost him," he said, "about 2 weeks ago." The crowd, losing interest, began to slide off. Jenkin clapped Adam on the back. "Have a good day," he said cheerfully. "I hope you find him. He was a good little dog, though he never cared much for me." He picked up his pole and pushed himself off. Still Adam stood there, rumpled from his tussle, his hood pushed back on his shoulders, his cap on the ice at his feet, and his tousled sandy head bare in the wind. "Gorhambury," he was thinking. "It's near St. Albans. Nick's gone back to Dame Mulkin's looking for me. There's where Nick is."